So originally I called this session Showcasing Your Resume, and I'm still talking about resumes and cover letters, but I'm spending less time on the basics of that because I don't think that's where you guys are anymore, and I'm spending more time on how to tailor them for positions you want to apply for, which is what everyone's going to eventually have to do by the time you graduate. Tailoring your resume, nothing will be just one format, one cover letter submitted for everything. And a lot of my undergraduate students I work with in part-time employment, I'm trying to teach them that as well. So we're looking over job descriptions and tailoring resumes now so they get that transition by the time they graduate and they can market their skills even better. So, to start, what are some essential, there are 3 things that are required in a resume, any resume that you have. What are they? Education. Experience. Okay. One more. No, just contact information. So education, contact information, and then your experience are the 3 that are required. They are listed here. We're going to go into these more specifically, but other sections we're not going to cover as in depth. In looking at your contact information, there are only a couple things that I really stress. Your phone number needs to have the area code. Your address, if you have one, needs to have your zip code attached. So be very careful about those. Your email address, don't make it something inappropriate. Always have your name in it. I suggest using your university email until you graduate and then using a Gmail of sorts. And I've had recruiters tell me a lot, don't use your name and then 07 or 11, because then that gives them keys on either how old you are when you graduated high school or when you graduated college. Those significant years, they just tell you to pick some numbers, like 12 or, well, that would even be construed as, or 6635, so your address instead of just your year you graduated or some other significant number. So they suggest that so they can't be biased on any cues of how old you are when you graduate, that kind of information. There are lots of different formats. The only thing I suggest is your name should be bigger and bolder than everything else on your page. That way it sticks out. They don't need to search for that. That should be a given. Next, for your education, there are a couple ways. For some of you that are in grad school and some in undergrad, you won't graduate from IUPUI. You just don't. You graduate from Indiana University or Purdue University. So what I did when I was an undergrad student here, I kept my resume as Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. Spelled it out, not IUPUI, which is really long. But when I graduated, I got a degree from Purdue. So I changed it. Purdue University, Indianapolis, graduated May 2011. So you can always change it. And Kelley School of Business, specific example, they like students to put Indiana University, Kelley School of Business, Indianapolis before they graduate. So it's not IUPUI at any point once you're in the program. They want you to transition into that Kelley name. With your GPA, what does it need to be before you just automatically include it on your resume, whether it's asked for or not? What would you want it to be? It's a 3.0. That's a really good GPA. 3.0 out of 4.0. Always put the scale, that way they know it's not a 5 or a 12. There are lots of different GPA calculations now, so make sure you put it out of what it is. If you have a track concentration, some schools do. If you're getting a minor, that should be also on another line, so put that information as well. And always put your expected graduation date, not your dates of attendance, because then it's confusing on if you graduated or not, and if you're still going there, or if it's past, they get confused on that. So always put your expected graduation date or when you graduated. What additional sections do you guys have on your resumes?
Skills and interests.
Skills and interests. Okay. What about you?
Accomplishments.
Accomplishments.
Volunteer experience.
Volunteer experience. There are lots of other sections you can have on a resume. This is just some that I researched on lots of different sites. These are a lot. There's a lot you can put on your resume to make it unique. International travel experiences, languages. I'd have to say of my undergrad students I work with, languages is the most left off. And some of which international students think it will be looked at negatively, but if they're trying to get an on-campus job that has a language requirement, like with the Office of International Affairs, it needs to be on there if they meet that requirement. Professional development. This would be a section you could put excellence in professionalism under, if you really wanted to. There are other sections we'll talk about specifically, but one is professional development. Where else have you thought about putting EIP? Or if you're attending our workshops, where would you consider putting that information? Other than professional development. You had accomplishments, right? That would be a section you could put that under. Skills, certifications, trainings. There's some other sections I think I talked about. I might have skimmed over it, and that's okay. But there are a couple sections you could put it under. Professional development, and I suggest combining it with other things. Organizations, certifications, things you already have information in. Adding EIP in one of those sections would be better than creating a brand new section. Because I always suggest that students have 2 or 3 items at least under each section versus just one. So if there's a section it could fall under, I'm not saying you have to put it under professional development. You could put it under trainings and workshops, and that will be perfectly okay to do. It's up to you where you include it. Saying, I honestly wouldn't put bullet statements about it. I would simply say excellence in professionalism, participant, member, certificate holder, whatever you end up completing as far as this program goes, and then the year you actually completed the program. So if it was the spring semester you did it, it would be April 2014. Or if it's the fall semester, it would be November 2014. This is something else. So how many of you have an objective or a summary of qualifications or a profile on your resume right now? What do you have? An objective? Okay. What if you have a cover letter? Do you need an introduction on your resume if you have a cover letter? No. And it depends. So this person has worked in the field a really long time. I like this for business students. I think it's really nice. I actually showed this to a student I met with just a couple minutes ago. Well, actually not a couple, probably about an hour ago. And she decided this is what she wants. She's going to do a personal profile, summary of herself here, and then list out specific tasks that she's completed marketing-wise at this point. She's done a lot of marketing things, and she's getting ready to graduate and going for an internship internationally. So this is the format she decided to use because she's submitting an application, and it's not asking her for a cover letter. She can submit one if she wants. She can attach it because in an application you can submit as many documents as you want in that one file. So she's going to anyway, but this would be a good start out for her for that application manager, whatever it may be, to pick out those keywords that she's going to list to know that she has the qualifications they're asking for. This is what I use, just a personal preference, a summary of qualifications. So I have about 5 statements. That's quite a bit, takes up quite a bit of room. But what it does is it summarizes specific areas of development based on a job description that you're combining from your resume. So an example is a job that I decided to apply for, really harped on working with nonprofits and volunteer organizations and having that involvement outside of pay. So what I did was I took a statement and said, participated in 7 years of volunteer organization commitments with 5 different nonprofit organizations, just to summarize what I had done. And they could read more individually about each one throughout my resume, but I wanted to make that statement to catch their eye so they'd look farther down my page. The last one is a skills profile. So these are very different than an objective. I always suggest an objective for part-time employment. It's very basic. It's letting them know you're a student seeking a part-time position in this field for this job title, going to utilize these skills or going to offer them these specific skills you want to give them. If you have a cover letter, a lot of these things aren't needed because you're going to cover most of this in that cover letter. Just some basic information first. General resume setup. Mac versus PC. Who has a Mac? Mac. You have a Mac too? Did you raise your hand? PC? Everyone else who doesn't have a Mac. I don't care, either or. But if you're going to email your resume to someone, regardless of what system you use, save it as a PDF. Now, one negative, if you go through an application and they tell you to upload your resume and they don't give you like a PDF or Word specification on that, always send it as a Word. Because some application managers can't read or pick out keywords through a PDF document because it's uneditable, so they have a hard time viewing that document and finding those keywords. So for applications, I'd submit it as a Word document. If you are physically emailing it to somebody, you should save it as a PDF. That way your text doesn't get messed up, and they don't need to edit your information anyway. They'll be able to read it just fine. Proofread, if you don't have someone else, me, I would be happy to proofread any of your resumes. Especially if you send me your resume and the position you're applying for, it'd be a lot easier for me to decide if you're missing anything key that I can help you figure out how to add. Align appropriately. Does anyone use a template right now? What do you think about templates?
They're kind of irritating. Like, they're easier to use at first, but as soon as you want to add new information, like, they only give you, like, for past job experience or whatever, like, they give you 2 or 3
Pre-made
areas ones, and then after that, like, you have to figure out how exactly they formatted it, and it's impossible to, like, add new sections.
Oh yeah. A template is set up for one specific reason. You're going to fit your information in there, or it's not going to be happy with you, and it's going to delete things. It's going to unformat and jumble things up. I agree. Templates are excellent for incoming freshmen who are starting to use resumes for the first time, haven't visited our office, or understand what they're doing. Should use a template to start off, to get their content ready. There are quite a few steps in resume development to get you to where I'm going to talk to you guys about in a second. And one of them, some come in with a template. I always encourage, if you're going to use a template to start off after your freshman year, we should get rid of it. Simply because when you get out in the real world, everyone is going to use templates. And there could be 75, 80 to 100 people who have the same template as you that they found on Word, and it doesn't make your resume look unique. And that's one thing we're looking for, is a unique styled resume that you have put together, which is where the indents and spacing comes in. And if you have questions about that or don't know how to do that, I'd be happy to help with that area. And there's other things you can do to make a resume your own. Titling your sections different, organizing your information. There are different types of resumes. There's skills-based, there's reverse chronological, there's a hybrid version of that. We talked about CVs a couple minutes ago, which is more for graduate level students. But there's lots of different ways you can help your resume stand out. When you're emailing, always save it with your name in it somewhere in the document. So if it's a resume, name resume. If it's a cover letter, name cover letter. Because when they save out the document, I'm just going to save it. And if you don't give it a title, and I've got 75 applicants, I don't have time to go through, see how you spelled your name, and give it a title myself. So I might lose that document later as well and not come back to it, and then therefore you don't get graded or you don't get an interview. I could lose it. I try not to, but I could. If you apply for a position like on Jack Jobs and they want you to email your resume to them and they don't say submit a cover letter, what do you put in that introduction? Once you hit the title, put that information in, what do you say to them? Has anyone applied via email before for something? So I'll go over this when we talk about cover letters more specifically. Easy to read font, don't be cursive, Lucinda, handwriting, anything like that. Arial, Times New Roman, and that helps with applications as well. They want universal fonts on the applications. It helps that application manager, that system, that robot is what we call it, read your resume and pick out those keywords easier than if you used a non-recognizable font. Use bold, capitalization, and italics. Never abbreviate information, which is why I said spell out Indiana University, Purdue University. And margins, I don't call it cheating, but my margins are 0.5. Because resumes these days are 1 page. So if you want to fit as much information as you can, make your margins 0.5, and widen and lengthen your page. Okay. So I think I passed out 2 of these already. We have a resume rubric. Alright, so this is just a basic one. This is one that I found that I really like because it covers formatting, it covers sections, but it doesn't go specific into the type of skills that I want you to have. It just talks about basic. These are points like on math homework that you should never miss. Like when you do the SAT, and they tell you to put your name and you automatically get 500 points. That's what this is. You should automatically get all of these points when you're submitting your application. That's a lot of points. What I generally do is I have a section for some of this stuff combined when I'm reviewing a resume, but my rubric looks a lot like this. I work with staff and faculty when we are hiring for full-time professional opportunities. Our rubrics look like this. They're in an Excel sheet usually so we can add up these points. But we're going through your resumes like this. And we're going through each section and we're giving you a point. So I suggest you take this, you go through your resumes, and you give yourself a point system. And figure out where you need to fix it so that you're meeting all of these. These are the easy points, the things that you should never miss out on. Questions about that? I would keep this and use it for friends' resumes. If they want you to critique their resume, this would be a good thing to use to do that also. What 3 questions should you answer in a cover letter? Very first one. Has anyone had to write one before? Kind of. They asked for a cover letter, so you submitted something you thought was a cover letter, that kind of thing. Okay, so there are 3 sections, and then there's some things that we're starting to do on campus and starting to recognize external units are doing as well, and I'll go over that. But the first is why you're writing. So there are 3 paragraphs in this document. The first one is why you're writing. The specific reason I'm applying for this position title, I found it through this network or through this reference or through this website, and this is why I'm excited about it. What it has to offer that you're really interested in, because they want to know it has some things that you're interested in. The next thing, why you are qualified. This is where tailoring comes in. This is how you tailor a cover letter. Cover letters should be specific to every position you apply for. The format of it will look the same, but the content will be very different for every position. Now you might get lucky in a lot of part-time positions you might apply for, want the same type of skills. I've seen it happen. A student brought me 4 job descriptions. We started on one cover letter just to give her an example of where to go from there. And it turned out that the skills they wanted, the qualifications were the exact same. So all she had to change was the very beginning. And if she thought one example was better than another, she changed it in this section. But most of it was the same. That could happen. Most of the time it's different for every position. You need to be specific. Give me examples. Answer the who, what, where, when of your examples. Sometimes when you're looking at a job description, some things can be covered on your resume pretty easily. And then you've met that requirement. Others, you have to explain more in depth how you've had that training, how you've done that group work, how you've gained that skill to really get it across to them that you have what they're asking for. The last, well, not the last area, but some additional questions that I like to ask. How will this position benefit you? Because it is a belief of mine as a part-time employer, as an intern employer, that if this job isn't going to benefit your future in some way, why would you do a good job at it? Why do you even want it? Because an internship with my office is a point where you can build those skills to either get into higher ed or to build marketing, event management type of skills that are going to go towards your degree when you graduate because you need that experience. So I want to know that you see a connection between your future and the position I'm going to offer you. And it literally came down to my candidates who I thought would benefit the most. They were all wonderful. I had 3 top candidates. And I had to ask myself, who's going to benefit from this position the most? Everything else being equal. And that's how I picked. Not a lot of full-time positions are going to do this. They don't want to know how it benefits you necessarily. We're trying to get more part-time, more internship type positions to do this. But for full-time, they want to know what all you can give them. GPA, do you plan on working elsewhere, expected graduation? This one and the GPA can be answered in your resume, but I specifically asked for it in a cover letter. Why do I do that? It's already on your resume. Why do I want it in your cover letter? Well, it's one of the skills that's very top for me is attention to detail. And if you don't pay attention to the application instructions, which are very easy, then how have you shown me that you have attention to detail? That's what I want. Just crossing your T's, dotting your I's type of work. It doesn't take very long to add this information into a cover letter. I want to make sure you can follow directions. The last section, what you want. Always thank them for their time. So that's basic information. And now we're going to talk about the specifics. So you guys have probably met a lot of the things I've just talked about. You know how to do it, you understand the process, you've got it. Now we're getting into something a lot of students don't necessarily do, even in full time. Are you qualified for a position? When you look at a job description, how do you know if you're qualified? You guys all work. I know you're working. Are you working right now? What are you doing? What's your job?
I'm bartender and I'm an RA.
All right. So RA, that's really tough to get into. How did you know you were qualified? That's like a 12-page application.
I guess I just thought I was qualified and I submitted my application.
Okay. Where did you know to look for the qualification information?
Like, know to look like within myself or within the application?
In the application. Where was that information at?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. So in the job description part, where it's telling you
Yeah.
what you're going to do, what skills you're going to utilize, what they're asking from you. Very first thing you should do, read the job description. More than once, more than for 5 seconds, because you will miss something that you probably have the qualification for and it will knock you out of the running. The average, people look at it, is about 50 seconds, but when you've got something this long, looking at it for just 50 seconds isn't going to be enough. You have to study it to make sure you have met all of the qualifications. Now this one, I put this off of DAG Jobs. I think it's closed now, but 20 to 30 hours preferred per week, $16 to $22 an hour. I thought that was amazing. I almost considered it myself. Special projects, social media, and research interns. So you're doing lots of different things. So that's exciting. Then they're asking for major projects. Here's the goals and the projects they're going to have you working on this summer. Here's the responsibilities you're going to have. We're not quite where we need to be yet. Here are the desired skills and then the qualifications. Here is the rubric information. The rubric I just gave you, this information is going to be on it, and they're going to grade you based on what you put in your resume and what you put in your cover letter. Some of it, familiarity with various social media platforms. One gripe I've heard from a lot of recruiters is don't put that you're an expert at social media unless you do it for a company. But just having social media pages doesn't mean you're an expert at it, because marketing to people on social media is a lot harder than it looks, and getting them to pay attention because there's so much stuff out there. How do you compete with all the other ads, all the other people on their news feeds? How do you get people to like your stuff, to want you as a friend, or want to be in your group, those kinds of things. So it's okay to say you're familiar, using their terminology, very important. So what I like to do, this isn't for everyone, I'm a visual learner. Depending on what kind of learner you are will decide how you learn information best, obviously. But what I do is I print off the job description, and I go and I highlight all of the qualifications I meet in one color, all of the ones I'm not sure I meet in another. That's a lot of qualifications to meet, but it's desired skills. So if they could have an optimal candidate, they would have these skills and this qualification. So you kind of got to read into the job description. If it's required, required means you must have it before coming into this role. If it's desired, preferred, it doesn't mean you have to have it right away, but if they were looking at an optimal candidate, the candidate would have required and preferred, everything. I write down an example of how I meet that qualification. And then I go back. I'm going to go back. And I say, okay, I meet all these things, so am I done? No. Because then I can go here, responsibilities. Have I done any of these things for anyone before? And do I have an example in my resume or my cover letter of how I've done it? Because then I'm going past their expectations and exceeding here. As an off-campus employer, they want the best candidate and the most qualified. So if I can tell them I have all of these, plus some of these, I look like a really good candidate for them to at least give an interview to. All right. So, what are you guys doing right now? You said you're an RA, you're a bartender, you work for the Hilton. Hilton, am I correct on that? We're done with that. And graduate student, very busy, probably in practicum internship stages pretty soon. Are you doing anything else? I said volunteer.
I've got like my own freelance photography and design company.
Okay. So you guys are doing a lot. Is there anything else? Of course, you're an EIP. What are some other things you're doing? Volunteer work, accomplishments. You've got to do volunteer work, Cox Scholars. Is all of that on your resume? For the most part. Anything here? So we've got internships, part-time jobs, class projects, very big one. Programs, workshops, student organizations. Can you think of other areas you guys are involved that we didn't just talk about? Big deep.
Professional organizations.
Professional organizations, is that on your resume? Mm-hmm. Sure it is. Anything else in this list? Is your resume up to date? Somewhat, yes, no. That's okay. It's kind of one of those things that you use it when you're ready to apply for something, and then you forget about it until you want to apply for something else, and then you're like, oh man, I need to update this, like now, because I want to apply for this. Keep a running document, just 3-4 pages, I don't care how long it is, of all your experiences. It might not be relevant to your field, it might not be relevant to a position you want to apply for, but it's like it's a tracker is what I call it, but you put it in the resume format, you've updated all of the information, and do that so when you do apply for positions, all you have to do is copy and paste what's relevant into your one-page submission. A lot easier, saves you a lot of time, and you keep up with it. Plus, if you have a LinkedIn page, that's also a really good way to keep up with all of your content, because you can include as much information as you want on that page. And LinkedIn's also very good, because if you apply for a position and you've submitted your one page, but you really want them to know about all these other cool things that you've done, it might not quite be relevant to the job description, but they might find relevant for the position. You put your LinkedIn information up there, they go to your LinkedIn page, it's a freelance of whatever they want to read about you, they can find. So then you're telling them about all of your other experiences. Anything that's not on there right now needs to be added. This is the most important part. So we talked about in paragraph 2 of your cover letter, that's how you tailor a cover letter, providing those specific examples of how you meet what they're asking for. Where do you do that in your resume? For those of you that have resumes, everyone. Where do you tell them, yes, I have this, and this is how I've used it, this is why? In your action statement. Well, we'll start here. In your related and work experiences, what's the difference between these two? We're going to say you could have both on your resume. What would you decide goes in each of these sections? Well, work experience you've been paid for, right? Okay. What's related experience?
Added experience.
Okay. So if you're going to tailor a resume, because experience is one of the 3 must-have categories. And I don't care if you call it work experience, professional experience, leadership experience, related experience. You see there's lots of different titles you can give for these sections. But related is relevant to the job. So they're going to look at this section first because they want to know what you think is relevant to the qualifications they're asking for. And it's paid or non-paid. So you can take something from your work experience section and put it in your related for the time being. You don't have to have both. I usually leave just work experience off, and I'll give you an exception to that in a minute. And you're going to give the position title, the exact title the organization gave you, because if If they ever call and do a reference check or an employment verification, they're going to tell them what your title was, and there's really no reason to lie or not call yourself and look up that information. The organization, the company, city, state, month, year to month, year. Here's just an example. This is what I'm talking about, where you can indent information. Some people space all the way over to the right side of the page and think it lines up correctly. It doesn't. You still have to set up an indent up at the very top on your ruler and tab over to that indent for all of your information. I tell you how to do that if you want to know later. And then you need 3 to 5 statements per position of what you've done. They're called, I call them action statements. Some people call them accomplishment statements. But it helps me remember that they're all going to start with an action verb. Related experience, here's some other things. It's not required that all of these be included. I'm just trying to get you thinking about what types of things can go in this section. Student organizations are really good ones. You do a lot of work in those, especially if you have a leadership position, but you weren't formally paid for it. This is just kind of an add-on. There are some skills that every employer wants, regardless of what field it's in. They did, I don't know, I think it was 2,000 companies. The National Association of Colleges and Employers, NACE, they do research every year, and this is from last year, 2013. They haven't come out with a new job outlook book yet. But here are the 10 most desired skills that employers want you to have basic before you come into a position, regardless of what field you're going into. The very first one, verbally communicate with people inside and outside of the organization. Second one, work in a team structure. Does anyone absolutely loathe working in teams? No? Good, because you're going to do it the rest of your life. Maybe not formally, your job itself might be independent, but you could be on committees and groups and task forces and retention teams and all kinds of things, brainstorming teams. I don't even know what else they call them, but you're going to work on teams to get things accomplished. You need other people. I'm very individualized. I always thought, I can do this. I can do it on my own. I'm perfectly fine. But I like other people's opinions. They actually have better ideas than I do. So when I work on teams, I have to really remember that I'm not alone in this. I need these people to make an event, to make a program, make things successful, so I can continue to do them in the future. We need other people. And then there's a longer list of things you can check off. If you don't have some of those, I suggest you figure out how you can gain them before you graduate. Most of the time through your academics, part-time employment, organizations, you're going to gain all of those skills. So, here's where we get to the important part. Accomplishments versus tasks. Actions versus tasks. I see this come in every day, and students are like, I cannot get a job, no one will call me back, and this is what it looks like. I'm not knocking. I looked exactly like this when I was a freshman student. I didn't do resume development when I was in high school. Wasn't very important. But they said they were a clerk for Old Navy. They ran a cash register, they stocked shelves, and they worked in a fitting room. That's a task. We start with those. That's okay. Better example, this was the actual title they had given. I don't know why they didn't use it in the first place. Old Navy met weekly with managers and team members to discuss policies and promotions, greeted customers, and assisted in purchasing decisions. So we're getting better. They even give me some numbers here. Anytime you can quantify your information, very helpful. When you can tell me how often you've done something, that's also very helpful. This is even better. Taking a task, and this is what we're going to do if you haven't done it already. So you take this task, and we're going to turn it into a statement. And how we do that is by asking these 4 questions. What did you do? This is the action verb part. Who was it for? Who was it with? How did you do it? Most of the time we can get here. We can get to this point. How did you do it? You can do that. What for? Or why? This is the hardest one. And I see statements that can get here, and then I ask you, why did you do that? And they're like, because we have a quota every week and we have to up our sales and up our positive feedback or we don't get bonuses. So you did it to up your sales, up your feedback. That's why. Or the what for. What was the purpose? That's something we forget to add. So, Number 8 on 12 successful resumes is using action words to describe your roles and accomplishments. And this is how we're going to do it. I have a huge list. It's broken up by skill. Management skills, creative, communication, accomplishment, helping, financial, clerical, teaching. Lots of different verbs you can pick from. And pick a job, I don't care what it is. Think of something that's on your resume right now that you might not have very good statements for. And flip over your rubric, and we're going to make new statements for it. Got it? Yes? So you're new. So Hilton might be a good place for you to start. And you're an RA. I'm sure you've got tons of stuff you could write about that. And in your photography business, guarantee there's something you could add to that. So let's start. What do you guys do? Just write the verb. Start slow. What's the action verb? Do you handle? Do you create? Do you organize? Execute? What is it you do? And pick 3 you can write about. The next part is to pick who is it for, who is it with. So it's not for someone, you're usually doing it with someone. So as an RA, if you're putting together a monthly professional development opportunity for students, are you doing that with 4 different RAs? Are you doing it by yourself? How many students would it be for? And give me numbers there. That's usually a good spot. When you're talking about who, the people, when you can give me numbers, that's very helpful. And I guess I'm talking about me as an employer if I'm going to review your resume. And that'd be pretty easy. So then we'll move on to the how. How do you do that? Anyone have an example up to this point of the words you picked? And it can't be this one. It's not a choice. Yes.
My word was exceed.
Okay.
Because at the development you're supposed to exceed expectations
Okay.
for every guest. So but I exceeded guest expectations by going above standards
Okay.
to improve their quality of experience.
Okay. And you answered me the why. To improve their quality of experience. That's why you do it. It's kind of a motivation. If you know the why, then you can identify it from your future. Your past performance is going to dictate your future success. So everything you've done up to this point is going to tell me what you're going to be able to do for me in a position. Because that's all I have to go by. You can tell me all day long you're a hard worker, but if you don't show me that somewhere in your resume, which hard worker is the #1 thing to not put on a resume, because it's very hard to describe. Or that you're a people person. Don't say you're a people person. Say that working as an RA, I like working with undergraduate college students around this age, and that's something that I have a passion for and would like to continue to do in the future. Because you've done it in a previous position, you give me a specific age group that you like to work with, and who knows, maybe Indiana Youth Group's hiring for a position, and that's something you're interested in. You can tell them, this is the population I've worked with, this is why I like to work with them, and this is why I want to work with this population in the future. You've left me no question that you know the type of people that you like to work with. So you're a people person. But there's a specific group, specific circumstances. Because I love working with people, but when I served, that was the worst experience of my life where I had to deal with people. 8 years of dealing with people. And I'm still a people person, there's just different formats that I like to interact and engage with people, and it's not in the serving industry. So be specific. What about you?
I said assisted 46 residents throughout the academic year to create a comfortable and fun living environment on campus.
Excellent. And you did it to create a comfortable and fun living experience on campus. Is that one on your resume already?
Not that exact statement.
Okay. Do you have the why on your resume? Is that the first time? And it surprised me. And this is the first time a lot of people have heard of this one. We usually get you here, but no one ever really heard of the why. But I suggest adding it. This will also help you identify. Did you have questions? Oh. This also will help you identify if your statement's too long. So sometimes we package things together. And if you get to the how, it's very easy to package things together. When you add the why, sometimes your one statement starts turning into a 2-part statement. And then you know where you need to cut off and start a new line. So when you apply, you guys have gained so much experience, you have just one page to fit everything in. I'm telling you, you need 3 to 5 statements per position. Well, that's a lot. You might only be able to fit 2 or 3 experiences on your one-page resume. In that case, pick the best 2 to 3 statements and include only those. But there's lots of things you do in positions. So you might have more statements than that, more things you can talk about in an interview setting. But you're going to pick the 2 to 3 that are most relevant to the job requirements at that time and leave the rest out, just to make sure you can fit everything you need. If you can fit everything, you can include more statements. Just kind of a place where you can trim some of that information. Questions about this process? Do we have some editing to do? I do. I have to update my information all the time. All right. Questions in general? Yes.
Mine says resumes are only supposed to be like a page long.
Yeah.
And what if, like right now it's not a big deal because I don't have as much relevant job experience, but when you get into the field that you want to go into and suddenly you have all these past jobs and stuff, like you don't have like 5 pages to list, like I worked at this company and this company and this company, so like, and I've heard that companies don't generally like to see like gaps in employment, but you can't lie on like when you work there. So like, do you list just the relevant ones, or like how do you work that out so it, like it looks like they want to see it?
Right.
Basically.
Well, there's a couple different things. Let's look at it in 2 ways. You're filling out an application and submitting your resume with it. You're filling out just a resume and submitting the resume by itself. With an application, you're going to have employment history be asked on that almost every time because they want to do employment verification. So that kind of takes care of, you know, all of your previous employment. And usually they want it, what, in the last 2 years, 3 or 4 jobs within the last 2 years, just to verify that you're telling the truth on all your other documents. And then that kind of gets to the breaks in employment. Your resume is not maybe going to have 2 of those 4 positions you're going to put down because it's the most relevant information. Everyone at this point is telling us as recruiters they want the most relevant experience within the last 5 to 10 years that you've done. When it becomes a problem with the gaps in employment is when you're putting maybe 20 years of experience on your resume because you took a long break and the last time you had professional experience was 15 years ago. It's like, okay, what were you doing? Well, maybe I was attending college, but for a college student, if you're not working and you have worked previously professionally, we have students who work professionally, come back to school and decide not to work. 4 years of no professional experience other than part-time jobs and internships, and then they're going back into the full-time world. Education is a perfectly acceptable reason to not to have that count in employment. That's perfectly okay. I don't foresee it being an issue in the future. And we're getting to the point now, the job hopping issue is kind of extinct. A lot of times my family stayed in business with the same people for 20, 25 years. The average now, with the age we are, we will transfer career fields, not just a job, but fields. So from marketing to accounting to nonprofit management, 5 times by the time we retire. So the average to stay in a position is about 2 years, especially with the campus. It's about 2 years. Then we're moving up or we're moving over. So it's a little different than it used to be. That kind of answers your question. Something else that's going to happen for some of you. You might not have a job description when you're applying for a position. You might go through a network and they might not have even had a job posted, but they still want to see your resume because they could open up a position if they really liked what you had to offer because you're referred from this really awesome person. And I've seen it done. It's been done for me very recently. And then you're like, well, crap, can you give me something? Because I don't know what you want to know about me. So I sent 2 pages. Because I could argue, based on the company, the culture, their mission, what they work on, those 2 pages were relevant information for me. Because they didn't technically have a formal position they were offering. They just wanted me to send their resume. So I want to show them as much as I can about my experience. That way, it opens up their minds about what potential opportunities they could offer me. So I've sent 2 pages in that instance. But if they had a job description, had specific qualifications, I keep my resume to that. So that's another example where you could have over a page, but some of the resume, we had this prezi go around the campus from this recruiter, and something that really bugs him is the title of it, Why We Won't Hire You. It was really cruel, actually. I went through it with a group the last time I did this presentation, and one of the things is you should not have a longer resume than someone who's been in the field for 25 years. And they're keeping their resume to 1 or 2 pages. So being fresh out of college, you have the internships and the part-time experiences, but it should not be longer than his, who's only 2 pages. And he's been in that same field for 25 years. He kept it to 2 pages, you can keep it to 1 page. If you're struggling on how to do that or what to cut, what to keep, career services is very helpful in different units. Our office can help, especially with part-time employment. Be happy to help with any of those things. Question? You had a question.
So you said when listing university only include like graduation date, not dates attended. But what if you've transferred schools and then you want to include accomplishments that you made at the previous schools? So
If you are, and that's something that when the question comes up, you have to include dates of attendance for that school because it would, in a reverse chronological resume, it's organized by dates. So most recent to least recent. So IUPUI would still be on top of that. But if you had very integrated, specific things you were including within your resume that were from that previous university, you want to put it so they know to reference that you were a student there, and just put your dates of attendance. That in that instance, it is okay for your dates of attendance. If you didn't finish, you're still not going there, and you'd have an end date on it. It wouldn't be to the present or anything like that. Let's say IUPUI, so she is transferred, she's finishing out her degree at this university. They get it at that point. Yeah.
Kind of going along with that, if you just, because that's what I went somewhere else for 2 years for my undergrad, then I finished at another college. But the main things that I include in my resume is from that second college. That first one just kind of takes up room. Do I have to include it?
No, you don't have to include. So even for you, if you didn't want to include that previous university, you could still put the accomplishments and put the organization at the university. Because you're finishing your degree here. For you, if nothing's coming from that university either, it can just drop off. No one really needs that information. The only reason I ever suggest keeping a previous university is if you need the GPA, because you don't have one here yet and you need that requirement to fill a position. But yeah, it's not necessary for you. But you would want since you're a graduate, you'd want your undergraduate degree information, where you completed it, the date you graduated. That would usually always stay on your resume. If you completed a degree, that would stay. Good question. Anything else? Is anyone in a position that doesn't work during the summer? Or doesn't work during breaks? Okay, good. Never mind. Well, I guess I'll say it if anyone's watching. We had an issue. So I work with America Reads, America Counts on this presentation last Friday. And the way they're set up, they work during the academic year. And there's no school in the summer, so they're not tutoring over the summer. So in that instance, they were asking, how do we put that on our resume? Because dates is one of the most commonly things lied about, and I don't think it's on purpose. I think people forget dates, and they put the wrong dates, and then the employment verification comes in, and oh, they lied. So in the instance that you have a seasonal position, when you work during breaks, when you work over the summer, instead of putting those 7 or 8 years of just the summer dates listed, put in parentheses by the job title in italics, seasonal. Now, if it's when you're just doing an academic year, not during breaks and not during the summer, if it's just a resume, you can just include to present. Because those breaks, no one gets what academic year stands for outside of higher education, so they're not going to know you mean from August to May. So it's okay just to leave it on your resume. If you submit it on an application, your resume with that, you might want to put school year in italics, or because it's not technically seasonal. Seasonal or short-term type positions. It would be during the school year, and they get that a lot better than during the academic year. Just don't know what that stands for most of the time. Other questions? All right, we have lots of fun things going on. So Thursday is the alumni panel. We have 4 alumni coming back from different fields, and they're just going to tell you what they've been doing, what it was like to get out in the work field, some things they were prepared for, some things they weren't, what they took advantage of in college to get prepared. I'll have a list of questions for you all if you don't have any of your own, but this is really a free game time. They're going to be honest with you. Do they like where they're at? Would they suggest this organization or this company? Because it's nothing invested for them. They're not recruiters, so it's very different. They're going to be very honest with you as IUPUI alumni, and it will be a really good opportunity to talk with them. We have information table this Thursday. We're giving out t-shirts and popcorn for National Student Employee Appreciation Week. We also have the Professional Image Project and Student Employee Showcase. If you're interested in that, we're still taking volunteers, and it's just a walkthrough event, so you can come at any time between 11 and 1. And then we have Minute to Win It challenges, which is just a fun day. Can you beat the clock? I don't know if anyone's seen Minute to Win It. Pretty fun event. The last thing, if you're in the EIP program trying to finish the requirements, don't forget that resume, cover letter, and your LinkedIn profile are due at some point. The networking ceremony is April 22nd, and there's an announcement on OnCourse. You can sign up for it. If you're not finishing, but you want to go because you've been participating in workshops, we'd be happy to have you there also. So we'll have employers and colleagues there to network with the students that have taken advantage of this program. Questions? Well, you guys are free to go. Try this off. Thank you for letting me use this. This is a nice one. I have a small one like that doesn't have, it's like half that size.
Yeah.